What if I told you that the most famous parable Jesus ever told, the one you've heard in Sunday school, the one quoted in movies, the one tattooed on people's arms? What if I told you that almost everyone gets it wrong? Not a little wrong, fundamentally wrong. We call it the parable of the prodigal son. But here's the thing, it's not really about the prodigal son at all. That younger brother, he's the bait, he's the setup. The real target of this story, the person Jesus is actually looking in the eye when he tells it, is someone else entirely. And when you understand who that person is, this parable stops being a nice little tale about forgiveness. It becomes a bomb, a theological grenade that Jesus throws right into the laps of the most religious people in the room. Today, we're going to tear this story apart, verse by verse, word by word, and rebuild it the way Jesus' original audience would have heard it. We're going back to first century Palestine. We're going to feel the cultural shock. We're going to see what's really happening beneath the surface. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you will never read Luke chapter 15 the same way again. Let's begin. Before we even open to the parable itself, we need to understand something critical. The room. Who is in the room when Jesus tells this story? Because if you don't understand the audience, you will miss the entire point. Luke 15, verses 1 and 2. Listen carefully. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Stop right there. That's the whole setup. That's the ignition switch for everything that follows. You've got two groups. On one side, tax collectors and sinners. These aren't just people who tell the occasional white lie. In first century Jewish culture, tax collectors were traitors. They worked for Rome, the occupying empire. They bid on the right to collect taxes, then added whatever surcharge they wanted on top. They extorted their own people. They were considered ritually unclean, morally bankrupt, and spiritually dead. And sinners. That wasn't just a general term. In the Pharisaic worldview, sinners were a specific category. It included prostitutes, criminals, people who worked forbidden occupations, and anyone who had visibly abandoned the covenant with God. To be labeled a sinner was to be placed outside the community of the faithful. You were ritually contaminated, and anyone who associated with you was contaminated too. On the other side, the Pharisees and scribes, the religious elite. These were the men who had memorized the Torah, all 5 books of Moses, plus extensive oral traditions. They tithed on their spices. They fasted twice a week. They wouldn't step into a Gentile's house for fear of contamination. They washed their hands with elaborate rituals before every meal. These were the gatekeepers of holiness, the people who believed that Israel's salvation depended on strict obedience to the law. And they are furious, not because Jesus is teaching, not because he's performing miracles. They're furious because he is eating with sinners. Now, we need to pause here because in our modern Western context, eating with someone doesn't seem like a big deal. You grab lunch with a co-worker, you have dinner at your neighbor's house, you share a meal at Thanksgiving with your weird uncle. It's just food, right? Wrong. Completely wrong. In the ancient Near East, sharing a meal was a covenant act. It was an act of profound intimacy, acceptance, and solidarity. When you broke bread with someone, you were saying, "I identify with you, I accept you, you belong to my community, I am bound to you." It was a public declaration of relationship. This is why in the Old Testament, when God makes a covenant with Israel, there's a meal. When kings make treaties, they share food. When Isaac blesses Jacob, there's a meal. The table is sacred space. So when the Pharisees say, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them," they're not making a casual observation. They're making an accusation. They're saying, Jesus is contaminating himself. He's embracing the unclean. He's violating the boundaries of holiness. He's breaking the code. And Jesus' response? He doesn't argue with them. He doesn't quote scripture at them. He doesn't launch into a theological debate. Instead, he does something far more devastating. He tells 3 stories: the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. These three parables form a single unit, a trilogy of lostness, and each one escalates. A sheep is one of 100, relatively low value. A coin is one of 10, more personal. But a son is one of 2. The stakes keep getting higher. The loss keeps getting more personal. The emotional weight keeps increasing. But here's what most people miss. All three stories share the same ending, a celebration, joy, a party. And in each case, the celebration is the point. Jesus is building toward a single devastating question. Will you join the party? Or will you stand outside and refuse to come in? And that question is aimed like a laser directly at the Pharisees. Keep that in mind. Burn it into your brain. Everything that follows, every single detail in the prodigal son story, is designed to force the Pharisees to see themselves in the mirror. This isn't a generic story about forgiveness. It's a targeted theological missile. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." In our culture, this sounds like a kid asking for his inheritance early. A bit rude, maybe. Entitled. Perhaps you'd ground him for a week. But in the ancient world, this request would have made the audience gasp. It would have been physically jarring. Here's why. In Jewish law, specifically in the Mishnah and the Torah, the inheritance was divided upon the father's death. The firstborn son received a double portion, which in a 2-son family meant 2/3 of the estate. The younger son received 1/3. But the critical word there is death. You received your inheritance when your father died. That was the trigger. That was the mechanism. There was a provision in Jewish law where a father could distribute property early, a practice called matanat bari, the gift of a healthy person. But even in those cases, the father retained the right to use the property and collect its income during his lifetime. The son could receive title, but the father kept the usufruct, the right to benefit from it. But the younger son doesn't just want title. He wants the cash. He wants to liquidate. And to do that, he's essentially saying, and everyone in Jesus' audience would have understood this immediately, "Father, I wish you were dead." Let that land. He is saying, "You are worth more to me dead than alive. I don't want a relationship with you. I don't want your guidance, your love, your presence, your wisdom. I want your stuff. Give me the money and let me go." In the shame-honor culture of 1st century Palestine, this would have been the most devastating insult a son could deliver to his father. It would have been grounds for the community to intervene. The village elders could have dragged this boy to the gates of the city and called for judgment. Deuteronomy 21, verses 18 through 21, describes the protocol for a rebellious son. The parents were to bring him before the elders of the city and declare, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us." And the penalty? The community was authorized to stone him. That's how seriously this culture took filial honor. Honor your father and mother wasn't a suggestion. It was the 5th commandment, with severe consequences for violation. Now, if this is already changing the way you see this story, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button right now, because what's coming next is going to blow the whole thing wide open. But what does the father do? So he divided his property between them. He gives it to him. No argument, no punishment, no lecture, no stone. He simply gives the boy what he asks for. And again, we need to feel the weight of this. The father doesn't just hand over some cash from a savings account. He divides his property, his land, his livestock, his assets, the estate he may have spent a lifetime building. In an agrarian society, land was identity, land was legacy, land was everything. He's literally tearing apart his estate, diminishing his own wealth, his own security, his own future, to give this ungrateful, dishonoring son exactly what he demands. This is grace before the cross. This is love absorbing the full cost of rejection. And the original audience would have been stunned, maybe even angry. No respectable father in their culture would do this. It's unheard of, it's scandalous. But Jesus is making a point. And he's making it about God. This is what God is like. When his children reject him, he doesn't destroy them. He lets them go. He absorbs the pain. He pays the price of their freedom. He gives them the dignity of their own choice, even when that choice breaks his heart. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. The Greek word for squandered literally means to scatter, to disperse, to throw in every direction. And the phrase wild living comes from an original word that literally means unsavably, without hope of recovery, beyond redemption. The boy didn't just spend his money, he annihilated it. He burned through his entire inheritance with a recklessness that suggested he never intended to come back. And notice, he goes to a distant country, not just geographically distant, but spiritually distant. He leaves the land of Israel. He leaves the land of covenant. He leaves the land of Torah, of temple, of sacrifice, of his father's blessing. He goes as far from home as he possibly can. This is the anatomy of sin condensed into a single verse. Sin isn't just bad behavior, it's distance. It's the deliberate decision to put as much space as possible between yourself and the source of love. It's the declaration, I can do this on my own. I don't need you. I don't want you. Your love is a prison, and I'm breaking free. And here's the irony. The freedom he runs toward turns out to be the worst kind of slavery. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. The money runs out. It always runs out. The party friends disappear. They always disappear. The fun evaporates. The music stops. And now this Jewish boy, this son of a wealthy estate owner, is desperate. He has nothing. He is nothing. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. Pigs. Of all the animals in the ancient world, Jesus chooses pigs. And this is absolutely, devastatingly intentional. Pigs were unclean according to Levitical law, Leviticus 11, verse 7. A Jew was not to eat pork, touch a pig's carcass, or have anything to do with swine. For a Jewish boy to be feeding pigs, touching them, being near them all day, living among them, would place him in a state of permanent ritual defilement. He would be disqualified from worship. He would be cut off from the covenant community. He would be, in religious terms, completely and utterly lost. This isn't just poverty. This is the absolute rock bottom for a Jewish person. He has gone from being a son in his father's house to being a slave, feeding unclean animals for a Gentile in a foreign land. He has become everything a faithful Jew should never, ever be. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. The pods here are likely carob pods, food for animals, not humans. He is so hungry that animal feed looks appetizing, and the phrase, "no one gave him anything," is heartbreaking. In Jewish culture, hospitality was sacred. Providing for the hungry was a fundamental obligation, part of what it meant to be a righteous person. But this boy has gone so far from his community, so far from his people, that no one extends even basic human kindness to him. He is utterly alone. He has lost everything: his money, his dignity, his identity, his community, his relationship with God, and his connection to his family. And that's when something shifts. If you're finding value in this, take 1 second and hit the like button. It sounds small, but it genuinely helps more people find this video. And trust me, you're going to want to stay for what comes next. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death?" That phrase, "came to his senses," is extraordinary. The original language literally says, he came to himself. It's the idea of waking up from a kind of madness, of coming out of a trance, of suddenly seeing reality clearly for the first time. Sin, in the biblical worldview, is a form of insanity. It's the irrational decision to reject what is good, true, and life-giving in favor of what destroys you. Every addict knows this experience. Every person who has wrecked their life through their own choices knows this experience. There's a moment, sometimes at the very bottom, where the fog clears and you think, what am I doing? How did I get here? This isn't who I am. That's what happens to the younger son. He wakes up, and notice what triggers his awakening. It's not guilt. It's not a sermon. It's not someone shaming him or wagging a finger at him. It's hunger. It's desperation. It's the physical reality of his own emptiness. Sometimes God uses our pain as an alarm clock. Sometimes the bottom is the only place where we're finally quiet enough to hear the truth. C.S. Lewis once wrote that pain insists upon being attended to, that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. This boy has finally heard the shout. But now pay attention to what comes next, because his next move reveals something crucial about how we typically think about coming back to God. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. This speech is incredibly important. Let's examine it closely, because it reveals the younger son's deep misunderstanding of his father's love. I have sinned against heaven and against you. This is genuine confession. He acknowledges both the vertical dimension of his sin, against God, against heaven, and the horizontal dimension, against his father, against relationship. This is real repentance. He's not making excuses. He's not blaming the famine or the pig farmer or the friends who abandoned him. He owns it. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. This is true humility. He recognizes that he has forfeited his rights. He has spent the inheritance. He has dishonored the family name. He has no legal or moral claim to sonship. But then comes the third part. Make me like one of your hired servants. And here's where things go sideways. In the Jewish household, there were 3 levels of workers. At the top, you had bond servants, permanent members of the household who were considered part of the family. They lived on the estate, ate from the family's table, and had a measure of security and belonging. In the middle, you had hired workers, day laborers who came and went. They were paid daily wages. They had no permanent place in the household, and they owed no particular loyalty to the family. At the bottom, you had slaves, people with no rights, no autonomy, and no standing. The son is saying, I know I can't be your son anymore. I've forfeited that, but maybe you'll let me work for you. Maybe I can earn my way back, not as a son, not even as a permanent servant, just as a hired hand, someone who works for wages, someone who pays his own way. This is the transactional mindset. This is how religion without relationship works. You mess up, so now you have to earn your way back. You have to perform enough good deeds. You have to grovel enough. You have to accumulate enough religious merit. You have to prove yourself worthy through your own effort. The son has a business plan. He's rehearsed his pitch. He's going to negotiate his way back into the family, not as a son, but as an employee. He's going to work off his debt. He's going to earn his redemption. It's a reasonable plan. It makes logical sense. But it has nothing to do with how the Father actually works. He doesn't understand grace yet, and honestly, most of us don't either. Most of us are still trying to negotiate with God, still trying to work off the debt, still trying to clean ourselves up before we walk through the door. And this parable is about to demolish that entire way of thinking. So he got up and went to his father. That's a simple sentence, 6 words in English, but it represents a monumental act of courage. This boy has to walk back through every mile of shame. He has to retrace every step of his rebellion. He has to pass through the same towns, the same countryside, the same territory he crossed when he was rich and arrogant and leaving. Now he's returning in rags. He smells like pig. His stomach is empty. His clothes are filthy. He has nothing, absolutely nothing to offer except himself. But he goes anyway. And the decision to go, the decision to turn around and walk toward the Father, even empty-handed, even filthy, even ashamed, that decision is the seed of everything that follows. And this is the moment the story explodes. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. I need you to slow down with me here. I need you to feel every word of this verse because it is one of the most extraordinary sentences ever written. Every phrase is loaded with cultural dynamite, while he was still a long way off. How does the Father see him from a great distance? There's only one explanation. The Father has been watching every single day, scanning the horizon, going out to the road, looking into the distance, waiting, hoping, aching. This isn't a casual glance out the window. This is a Father who has never given up, a Father who refuses to believe his Son is gone forever, a Father who watches and waits and watches some more. He was filled with compassion. The original word here comes from the Greek word for intestines, for guts. It describes a visceral, gut-wrenching, almost painful compassion. This isn't a sentimental feeling. It's not a mild wave of pity. This is a physical, overwhelming, body-shaking response. The Father sees his boy and his insides twist with love. He ran, and this is where the original audience would have been absolutely shocked, stunned. In the ancient Near East, a dignified patriarch did not run, ever. Running required you to hitch up your long robes, exposing your legs, which was considered deeply shameful for an older man of standing. A wealthy estate owner running through the village would have been a humiliating spectacle. People would have stared, people would have whispered. It was considered beneath the dignity of a respected elder. But this Father doesn't care. Dignity means nothing to him compared to his Son. Status means nothing. Reputation means nothing. He gathers up his robes, exposes his legs, and sprints, an old man, running like a boy, toward his filthy, broken, pig-smelling child. And Kenneth Bailey, the renowned Middle Eastern scholar who spent over 40 years living in Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt, studying the cultural background of Jesus' parables, argues that the Father's running serves a crucial additional purpose beyond just urgency. The Father runs to intercept his Son before the village does, because in first-century Jewish culture, if a Jewish boy lost his inheritance among Gentiles and then had the audacity to return to the village, the community would perform what was called the kazaza ceremony, a ceremony of cutting off. The village elders would take a large clay pot, fill it with burned corn and nuts, smash it at the boy's feet and declare, "You are cut off from your people." It was a public, irreversible act of communal excommunication, a social death. The Father runs to prevent this. He reaches his Son before anyone else can get to him. He throws himself on his Son, covers him with his own body, his own embrace, his own reputation. He shields him from judgment. He interposes himself between his guilty child and the consequences that community justice demands. Do you see it? Do you see the cross here? The Father humiliates himself, runs, exposes his legs, makes himself a spectacle of ridicule to protect his Son from the punishment he deserves. He absorbs the shame so his Son doesn't have to carry it. This is the gospel in a single verse. Before there was Calvary, there was a Father running down a dirt road, and the love is the same. He threw his arms around him and kissed him. The original word for kissed here carries an intensity. It means he kissed him fervently, repeatedly, passionately. This isn't a polite peck on the cheek. This is a Father weeping on his Son's neck, covering the stench of pigs and failure and shame with the overwhelming fragrance of love. And now comes the Son's rehearsed speech. The Son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But wait, compare this to what the Son planned to say. Go back to verse 19. He planned to add, "Make me like one of your hired servants." That was his business proposal. That was his negotiation strategy. But he never gets the chance to say it. The Father cuts him off. He interrupts the speech. He doesn't even let the Son finish. Because the Father isn't interested in negotiations. He isn't looking for a deal. He doesn't want an employee. He doesn't want a worker. He doesn't want someone who earns their place. He wants his Son back. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. But the Father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate." For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Every single item the Father calls for is deeply symbolic, dripping with meaning that the first-century audience would have recognized immediately. Let's take them one at a time. The robe. The best robe, literally in the original language, the first robe, the finest garment in the house. This was not just any nice outfit. Scholars like Kenneth Bailey and Joachim Jeremias believe this was likely the Father's own robe, the patriarch's personal garment, the one that identified him as the head of the household. By placing it on his son, the Father is doing something extraordinary. He's clothing his son in his own identity. He's wrapping him in his own status, his own honor, his own standing. He's saying, "You came back wearing rags, smelling like pigs, carrying nothing. I'm covering all of that with who I am." This is the gospel in a single image. We come to God covered in the filth of our own rebellion, and He wraps us in His righteousness. The Son doesn't earn the robe. He doesn't buy it. He doesn't work for it. He doesn't deserve it. It's a gift. Pure, unearned, extravagant grace. The ring. In the ancient world, a signet ring was not mere jewelry. It was a symbol of authority and legal identity. It was used to stamp documents, to seal contracts, to authorize transactions. It was the ancient equivalent of a power of attorney. Giving the son a ring means restoring his authority as a full legal member of the family. It means, you speak with my authority, you carry my name, you have full rights, you can transact business on my behalf. Think about what this means. This boy squandered half the family estate. He brought shame on the entire household. He wished his father dead. And the father responds by giving him signing authority over what remains. That's insane by any human standard. It defies every principle of prudence, justice, and common sense. But that's grace. Grace doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. If it made sense, it wouldn't be grace. It would be a business transaction. The sandals. This detail is easily overlooked, but profoundly important. In the ancient household, servants went barefoot. Only family members wore sandals. Slaves were barefoot. Hired workers might have their own shoes, but they weren't given shoes by the master. Only sons and daughters were shod by the patriarch. By putting shoes on his son's feet, the father is making a declaration to every person in the household, every servant, every worker, every neighbor watching. This is not a servant. This is not a hired worker. This is not an employee who's going to work off his debt. This is my son. He has full status. Treat him as such. 3 gifts, 3 declarations. The robe says, I cover your shame. The ring says, I restore your authority. The sandals say, I confirm your identity. Together, they constitute a complete and total restoration. Not partial, not probationary, not, let's see how you do for 6 months. Complete, immediate, full. And then, the feast. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. A fattened calf was an enormous amount of food, an animal that had been deliberately fed and prepared for a special occasion. A single fattened calf could feed well over 100 people. This wasn't a quiet family dinner. This was a village-wide open invitation celebration. The father is throwing open his doors and inviting the entire community to come and rejoice. And notice the father's words. This son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Dead and alive, lost and found. The Father uses the language of resurrection. This is not hyperbole. To the Father, the return of his Son is genuinely analogous to a resurrection event. His Son walked out that door as good as dead, spiritually dead, relationally dead, covenantally dead. And now he's come back. The grave has given him up. Death has been defeated. His Son is alive. Now, if this were a movie, this would be the perfect ending. The music swells, the credits roll, everyone in the theater cries. The prodigal comes home, the father forgives, the celebration begins. It's beautiful. It's complete. Roll the credits. But the story doesn't end here. And the reason the story doesn't end here is because the ending we've just seen isn't the point. It's the setup. It's the first act. Because remember, Jesus isn't telling this story for the prodigals. The tax collectors and sinners already know they're lost. They don't need convincing. Jesus is telling this story for the Pharisees. He's telling it for the people standing on the outside with their arms crossed, muttering about who belongs at the table and who doesn't. And that means the real story, the part that makes this parable the most dangerous thing Jesus ever said, hasn't even started yet. Okay. Now forget everything you think you know about this parable, because the second half of this story is the part that nobody talks about, and it changes everything. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. Let's stop. Let's think about the older brother for a moment, because he's been invisible until now. Where has he been during this entire story? He's been in the field, working, dutifully, faithfully, obediently laboring on his father's land. He didn't run off. He didn't squander anything. He didn't rebel. He stayed. He obeyed. He did everything right. And in the eyes of the Pharisees listening to Jesus tell this story, the older brother would have been the hero. He's the responsible one, the faithful one, the one who honored his father, the one who earned his place. In fact, if you're an ancient Jewish listener, you probably identify with the older brother completely. You think, that's me. I stayed. I did my duty. I deserve recognition. But watch what happens next. Watch how Jesus turns the mirror. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Notice, he doesn't go in to find out. He calls a servant and asks. He stands at a distance. He keeps himself separate. Already there's a posture of suspicion, of guardedness, of reluctance to join what his father has initiated. "Your brother has come," the servant replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. Angry. The original word describes a deep, burning, settled indignation, not a flash of irritation, a seething fury. And he refused. The original tense suggests ongoing, sustained refusal. He didn't just hesitate. He planted his feet and said no. Now think about what this means in context. In the culture of the ancient Near East, when the patriarch of a household throws a feast, the eldest son has a specific and important role. He is the co-host. He greets the guests at the door. He oversees the service. He ensures the event runs smoothly. He is, in essence, the extension of the father's hospitality. For the eldest son to refuse to enter the feast is not just rude, it's a nuclear-level public act of rebellion against the father. It's a slap in the face. It's a declaration in front of the entire village that says, "I disagree with you. I reject your decision. I refuse to participate in your celebration. You're wrong, and I want everyone to know I think so." Did you catch that? Let me say it again because this is the pivot point of the entire parable. The elder brother is now doing the exact same thing the younger brother did. He is publicly shaming the father. He is defying the patriarch. He is refusing to honor his father's will. The younger brother did it by asking for his inheritance and leaving. The older brother does it by refusing to enter the feast and staying outside. Different methods, same sin, same result. Both of them end up outside the celebration. The younger brother sinned through wild, visible, dramatic rebellion. The older brother sins through cold, quiet, self-righteous refusal. One ran to the far country, the other stands in the yard, but neither of them is inside the party. And this is the first twist the Pharisees would not have seen coming. The obedient son, the one who did everything right, is just as lost as the one who ran away. You can be lost in the far country, but you can also be lost in the front yard. You can be estranged from the father in a pigsty, but you can also be estranged from the father while standing right outside his door. And now comes the second shock. So his father went out and pleaded with him. The father goes out again. Just as he ran down the road to the younger son, he now leaves the party and goes outside to the older son. He interrupts his own celebration. He walks away from his guests, from the music, from the feast, to go stand in the yard with his angry, resentful, stubborn eldest child. In both cases, with both sons, the father is the one who initiates. The father is the one who moves. The father is the one who closes the distance. He doesn't wait inside for the older son to cool down and come in on his own terms. He goes out, he seeks, he pursues, and notice the word, he pleads with him. The original word means to urge, to comfort, to entreat, to come alongside. This isn't a command. It's not, get in here right now or you're out of the family. It's not an ultimatum. It's a father, gently, tenderly, lovingly, begging his son to come inside and share in the joy. The father is humiliating himself again, in front of the guests, in front of the servants, in front of the entire village. The patriarch of the household has left his own feast to stand outside and plead with his petulant, angry son. This is not how patriarchs behave. This is not how power works. This is not how honor functions in that culture, but this is how God works. This is what God does. He doesn't just pursue the obvious sinners. He doesn't just run after the rebels. He also goes out to the self-righteous. He goes out to the religious. He goes out to the people who think they don't need grace because they've already earned their place through moral performance. He goes out to the Pharisees. He goes out to us. And now the older brother's anger erupts into words. And his speech, this speech, is one of the most revealing passages in all of Scripture. It's a window into the soul of religious legalism, and it's devastating. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. Let's take this apart piece by piece. Look!" In the original language, this is a sharp, aggressive interjection. It's almost confrontational. And notice, there's no father, no title of respect, no acknowledgement of relationship. The younger son, for all his failures, at least said "father" when he returned. The older brother can't even manage basic courtesy. He speaks to his father with naked contempt. "All these years I've been slaving for you." Slaving. That's the word he uses, the word for slave labor. Think about the tragedy packed into that single word. This son has been living in his father's house, eating his father's food, sleeping under his father's roof, benefiting from his father's provision. And the whole time, in his own mind, he has been a slave. He has never experienced himself as a beloved child. He has never tasted the joy of being a son. He has been grinding through his duties, accumulating resentment, keeping score, and all the while, he has been as far from the father's heart as his younger brother was in the pigsty. Maybe farther, because the younger brother at least knew he was lost. This is the devastating insight at the heart of the entire parable. You can live in the Father's house and never experience the Father's love. You can be obedient, dutiful, religious, disciplined, consistent, and never actually be a son. You can do all the right things for all the wrong reasons. You can serve God your entire life and never know Him. And never disobeyed your orders. Listen to the language. He says orders, not desires, not heart, not wishes, not will. He reduces the Father's relationship to a set of commands, a checklist, a performance evaluation, a compliance scorecard. This is religion without relationship. This is legalism in its purest form. The Father isn't a person to love, He's a boss to satisfy. God isn't a father to enjoy, He's a taskmaster to appease. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. And here is the tragedy in all its fullness. The Father's estate, everything in it, including young goats and fattened calves, has always been available to the older son. The Father will say exactly this in a moment. Everything I have is yours. But the older son never asked. He never entered into the joy. He never took the Father up on his generosity. Why? Because he didn't see himself as a son. He saw himself as a slave. And slaves don't ask for things. Slaves don't celebrate. Slaves work and wait for their wages. He's been a slave in a house where he was always a son. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Notice two things. First, he doesn't say my brother. He says this son of yours. He has disowned his own sibling. He refuses the relationship. He separates himself from his brother and by extension from his father's decision to receive him. Second, he adds, with prostitutes. Here's the thing. The text never says the younger son spent his money on prostitutes. Go back and read it. Luke 15 verse 13 says he squandered his wealth in wild living. That's it. No prostitutes mentioned. The older brother invents this detail. He embellishes. He adds the most scandalous, most degrading interpretation possible because he wants to paint his brother in the worst possible light, and by extension, make his father look foolish and unjust for receiving him. This is what self-righteousness does. It doesn't just judge, it exaggerates, it fabricates, it creates a narrative of the other person's sin that's worse than reality because it needs the contrast. It needs the other person to be terrible so that its own goodness can shine by comparison. Self-righteousness requires someone to look down on. It feeds on contempt. And now comes the father's response. And it is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful passages in all of human literature. "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." My son, some translations say, my child. The father responds to contempt with tenderness, to anger with gentleness, to accusation with assurance. He doesn't rebuke his son. He doesn't correct his disrespect. He doesn't pull rank. He just calls him what he's always been, my child. You are always with me. You have never been away. You've never been lost. You've never been far. The whole time you were in the field, grinding through your duty, stacking up your obedience, keeping your score, you were with me. My presence has been your inheritance all along. I was never withholding. You were never earning. You were always, already, completely mine. Everything I have is yours. You didn't need to earn anything. It was already yours. The ring, the robe, the feast, the goats, the calves, all of it, available, waiting, yours for the taking. You just never claimed it. You never asked. You never entered into the joy that was always there for you, because you were so busy being a slave that you never realized you were a son. But we had to celebrate. Had to. The original word denotes divine necessity. It means it was absolutely required. The father isn't apologizing for the party. He's saying, when the dead come back to life, celebration isn't optional. It's the only possible response. It's as necessary as breathing. This brother of yours, notice the gentle but firm correction. The older son said, this son of yours, deliberately distancing himself. The father says, this brother of yours, deliberately reconnecting them. He's reminding the older son of what he's trying to deny. You are connected. You are family. You share blood. You share a father. You cannot disown him without disowning me. You cannot reject him without stepping outside the family yourself. And then the story ends. Just like that. No resolution, no final scene, no closing verse. We never find out what the older brother does. We never learn if he goes inside or stays out. We never know if he accepts the father's invitation or walks away into the darkness. The story is left deliberately, intentionally, agonizingly open. And this is absolutely unmistakably intentional. Jesus leaves the ending unwritten because the ending is for the Pharisees to write. The parable is a mirror. Jesus is looking at the religious leaders, the good, obedient, faithful, rule-keeping religious leaders. And he's saying, you are the older brother. You're standing outside the feast. The door is open. The music is playing. The father is pleading. The sinners and tax collectors are inside, celebrating, eating at the table. What are you going to do? The younger son's story is complete. He repented, he returned, he was restored. But the older brother's story is unfinished. And the question that hangs in the air, that has echoed through every century, every church, every heart since that day, is this: will you go in? Now that we've walked through the entire story, I want to pull back and show you the architecture, the big picture of what Jesus has constructed, because this parable reveals something that most sermons never touch. It reveals three distinct ways a human being can be lost, and only one of them looks like rebellion. The first way to be lost is the younger brother's way, the way of open rebellion. This is the path of the person who says, I don't want God, I don't want rules, I don't want anyone telling me how to live. I want to be my own God, make my own decisions, live on my own terms. This is the hedonist, the atheist, the person who runs from God at full speed. This is the most obvious kind of lostness. It's visible, it's dramatic. It's the person everyone points to and says, that person is clearly far from God. And in many ways, it's the least dangerous kind of lostness, because the person who runs usually hits a wall. The money runs out, the friends disappear, the pigsty gets unbearable. And in that moment of desperation, there's a chance, a real chance, that they'll come to their senses and start the long walk home. The second way to be lost is the older brother's way, the way of moral performance. This is the path of the religious person who does everything right, but for all the wrong reasons. They obey God not because they love Him, but because they want something from Him. They serve not out of gratitude, but out of calculation. Their obedience is a form of currency, a way to accumulate merit, to build a case, to earn what they believe God owes them. They tithe, but they're keeping a ledger. They serve, but they're expecting a return. They follow the rules, but they resent every rule that doesn't pay off. And underneath the polish, underneath the perfect attendance and the volunteer hours and the scripture memorization, there's a seething, quiet bitterness, a sense that God hasn't upheld His end of the bargain. This is the subtler, more insidious kind of lostness. It's invisible from the outside. It's respectable. It's the person who sits in church every Sunday, who tithes faithfully, who volunteers regularly, who can quote scripture from memory, but who has never actually experienced the Father's love. They've been in the house all along, but they've been living with a slave's heart. And here's the terrifying part. The older brother's lostness is more dangerous precisely because it doesn't look like lostness. The younger brother, at rock bottom, at least knew he was lost. He came to his senses. He could see the pigsty, he could smell it. His lostness was obvious. But the older brother? He has no idea he's lost. He thinks he's the righteous one. He thinks he's the hero of the story. He thinks the problem is everyone else. The wayward brother, the foolish father, the broken system that rewards failure. His self-deception is so complete, so airtight, that he cannot see his own condition. And that blindness, that inability to recognize your own lostness because you're too busy being good, is the most dangerous spiritual condition a person can be in. Timothy Keller summarized it perfectly when he wrote that the younger brother's sins were more obvious but less dangerous, while the older brother's sins were less obvious but more deadly. You can be just as far from God by doing everything right as by doing everything wrong, if you're doing the right things for self-centered reasons. The third way to be lost, and this is the one most people completely miss, is the way of the spectator. The person who hears the story, nods along, agrees with all the theology, appreciates the cultural background, and then closes the book and changes absolutely nothing. You can know this parable by heart. You can explain the kazaza ceremony. You can identify the symbolism of the robe and the ring and the sandals. You can write a doctoral dissertation on the narrative structure of Luke 15. And you can still be standing outside the feast, because the feast requires something that no amount of knowledge, no quantity of information, no depth of theological understanding can substitute for. It requires you to walk through the door. It requires you to accept the robe. It requires you to sit down at the table with people you might think are beneath you. It requires surrender. Let me point out something about this parable that has haunted theologians for 2,000 years. There are 3 parables in Luke 15, and they form a triptych, a 3-panel work of art. and 2 of those 3 panels end with complete, unqualified joy. The shepherd finds his lost sheep, and he calls his friends and neighbors together, saying, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." Complete joy. Everyone celebrates. The woman finds her lost coin, and she calls her friends and neighbors together, saying, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." Complete joy. Everyone celebrates. But the third parable, the one with the highest stakes, the deepest emotion, the most human story, ends without resolution. The celebration is happening inside the house, but one person is standing outside in the dark, and we never find out if he comes in. 2 parables end in joy. The third ends in a question mark, and that open question, that unfinished ending, is the most important question in the entire Gospel of Luke. It may be the most important question in the entire New Testament. Will you let God love you? Not, will you obey God? Not, will you be moral? Not, will you perform well enough? Not, will you keep the rules? But, will you let God love you the way He actually wants to love you? Will you stop trying to earn what has already been freely, recklessly, prodigally given? Will you stop being a slave and start being a child? That's the question Jesus asked the Pharisees 2,000 years ago, and it's the question He's asking you right now. So let me ask you directly, because this parable demands a response. It doesn't let you walk away neutral. It doesn't let you sit on the fence. It doesn't let you just admire it from a distance. It grabs you by the collar and says, choose. Where are you in this story? Are you the younger brother? Have you taken what God has given you, your talents, your time, your health, your relationships, your very life, and spent it all on yourself? Have you run to a distant country, tried to build a life on your own terms without Him, and now you're sitting in the aftermath, hungry and alone, wondering if there's any way back? If that's you, here's what I need you to hear. Lean in. The Father is watching for you. Right now. Today. He hasn't given up. He hasn't moved on. He hasn't written you off. He is standing at the edge of the road, scanning the horizon, looking for the first silhouette of your return. And the moment you start walking, even if you're limping, even if you're crawling, even if you smell like everything you've been through, He is going to run. Not walk, not stroll, run. Because He has never, not for one single second, stopped wanting you. You don't need a speech. You don't need a plan. You don't need to clean yourself up first. You don't need to get your life together before you come home. Come as you are. Start walking. He'll do the rest. Or are you the older brother? Have you been doing all the right things, attending church, reading your Bible, giving your tithe, serving in ministry, keeping the rules, but somewhere along the way, your service became a transaction? Has your obedience become a ledger? Have you been keeping score? Have you been living with a quiet, corrosive resentment, a nagging sense that God owes you something because of how faithfully you've performed? If that's you, I need you to hear this. The Father has left the party to come find you. He's standing outside with you right now, and He's saying, gently, tenderly, with infinite patience, "My child, you are always with me. Everything I have is yours." You've been working like a slave in a house where you were always a child. Come inside. Stop earning. Start receiving. Stop performing. Start living. Let me love you. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. You are mine. You have always been mine. Or maybe you're the spectator. You've heard this story today. You've watched this video. You've nodded along. You understand the cultural context. You appreciate the word studies. You think the parable is a beautiful piece of literature, but you haven't walked through the door. You haven't let it reach the deepest, most protected, most guarded parts of your heart. You're keeping it at arm's length. You're analyzing it instead of being changed by it. If that's you, I want you to know something. The door is still open, right now. The music is still playing. The table is still set. The Father is still waiting, and He's not checking your credentials. He's not asking for your resume. He's not reviewing your performance history. He's just asking you to come in, 2,000 years ago, on a dusty road somewhere in ancient Palestine, a rabbi named Jesus sat down with sinners and told a story about a father and two sons. And the story was never finished. He left it open, on purpose, deliberately, because the ending isn't his to write. It's yours. The younger son's chapter is closed. He came home, but the older brother's chapter remains open, and that open chapter is an invitation. It's the most personal, most urgent, most tender invitation ever extended. Come inside. Stop standing in the dark. Stop arguing about who deserves to be at the table. Stop trying to earn what was always free. Come in, sit down, and let the Father throw his arms around you. The party's already started, and there's a seat with your name on it. If this video spoke to you, if something moved inside you today, I want to ask you to do two things. First, share it. Right now, send it to one person who needs to hear this. Text the link. Post it. You might be the reason someone comes home today. You might be the reason someone stops being a slave and starts being a son. And second, hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We go deep into scripture like this every single week, pulling apart the text, digging into the history, finding the things that most people miss. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.